On July 18th, 2018, the San Antonio Spurs traded away Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green in return for DeMar DeRozan, Jakob Poeltl, and a soon-to-be 29th overall pick. And after that trade, the course of the San Antonio Spurs and Raptors history would change forever. This is the Kawhi Leonard epidemic. Hello everybody, welcome back to the Devin Schneiderman YouTube channel. I know it's been a bit of a while, guys, but I'm back, and today I thought I'd bring you guys a video in which I go over the events that led up to the Raptors championship, as well as what had happened between these two teams and their players, including DeMar DeRozan and Kawhi Leonard, and other relationships as well. And to sum it up in this video, I'll kind of want to go over the stats of between DeMar DeRozan and Kawhi Leonard, as well as what impacts they had on their teams, respective teams, what kind of success that those two teams had in the short term, but not long term, because we still don't really know how the Spurs will be in the coming years, of how the young roster will be. But I'll get into that later in the video. Anyways, I hope you guys do enjoy the video. If you guys have any other suggestions about NBA players or maybe even NFL players that you want me to, kind of look back on and maybe even talk about or critique, let me know down below. Well, I hope you guys do enjoy the rest of the video, and I will see you next time. Peace. I thought it'd be best if we started off with the San Antonio Spurs. So the first player we were going to talk about is DeMar DeRozan. Now, the man played a total of 77 games this year, and his stats include 21.2 points a game, had a field goal percentage of 40.1%, along with 6 rebounds and 6.2 assists a game. Now, DeRozan statistically had a very good season, but when he was on the floor or the field, the Spurs weren't necessarily any better than they were without him. Now, although he was a consistent scorer, DeRozan still struggled at times, especially during the January and February period of the league. But nonetheless, DeRozan is a extremely talented player, and he brought a lot to the Spurs organization this past season. There are a couple things I am worried about DeRozan, and it's about his age and about his defensive abilities. Now, I think more time DeRozan spends with Popovich, I think he will get better this season, and I do expect a lot more from him, and I think that he will deliver as well. Now, if there's one thing I will have to say, it's his playoff display, and what he showed at the playoffs was a little underwhelming. For a guy that, it's been there several times and has failed time and time again, especially against players or the competition as LeBron James, you would think that with a new team in a different conference, the man would be able to succeed. But in the 7th game in the Nuggets series, dude went 7 for 21, which is not exactly eyebrow-raising stats, at least not in the good sense. But I think if DeRozan can repeat at least somewhat he did this season and maybe even step up more, I think that the Spurs can find a lot more success playoff-wise, along with the development of their younger players. But, I still think DeRozan was a nice piece, and I think the man himself can become an extremely good player for San Antonio. I only expect good things from him coming up. Next player on our list is Jakob Poeltl. Now, Poeltl played a total of 77 games this season, equal to DeRozan's amount. He averaged 5.5 points a game with a 64.5% field goal percentage, along with 5.3 rebounds a game and 1.2 assists. Now, Poeltl wasn't expected to do a lot this season, but when he was on the floor, he delivered, and I think that along with DeRozan's development under Popovich, I think he'd become a very good player in the center or power forward position. Now, I'm not expecting Poeltl to be an all-star-like player this season, but I do expect a little bit more of him, just like DeRozan. He is still fairly young, and I think he's a lot of potential with the Spurs organization, and I expect a lot of good things for Poeltl. Finally, on the Spurs side of the ball, we have Keldon Johnson, the player who became the protected first-round pick, aka the 29th pick. Now, Keldon Johnson had a moderately good season at Kentucky last year, and I still think he's a very good pickup at the round or selection he was picked at. Now, to say that Johnson is an automatic winner is a bit of an understatement. We still don't know much about him. We still don't know how he's going to do in the NBA itself, but I don't expect him to even play that many games this season, as the way of the Spurs is they usually put their players in at least the G League for most of the season. But it would be very nice to see what he can do as a player, not only in the G League, but when his time comes to actually play professional ball. Now, he's had a moderately to high expectational great summer league. There was a couple of games where he averaged over 20 points a game, and I think that, especially defensively, the dude can be a great two-way player. I'm not saying he's automatically going to be equal to Kawhi Leonard because he's far from it, but I still think, just like most of the other players on the Spurs team, the man has a lot of potential. I think that's what it really comes down to, this Spurs team, is that if they're going to be real winners of this Kawhi Leonard trade in maybe, 4 or 5 years, players such as Derek White, DeJounte Murray, and even Bryn Forbes are going to have to step up and really show that they themselves can be NBA superstars and maybe lead the Spurs to a title. Now, I don't think that's something that's, very possible, but it would be very cool, and I think they would be somewhat of an underdog team, just like they were in 2014. So, on to the Raptors. So, next we're going to talk about Danny Green, a player who got somewhat mixed up in this trade. Now, Danny Green played a total of 80 games this season, averaging 10.3 points a game, 46.5% field goal percentage, with 4 rebounds and 1.6 assists a game. Now, last season, Danny Green had a pretty average season for Toronto, but although he did not get as many minutes as all the other players, such as Pascal Siakam. But when Toronto needed Danny Green to show out, he would, and he, as an ish for 3-point shooting, is exceptionally well at it. I'm not saying that Danny Green is the reason why Toronto was able to edge out the other competition throughout the season and the playoffs, but he certainly helped them out dramatically when they needed a top scorer. And finally, the grand finale, the claw himself, Kawhi Leonard. Now, this season, Kawhi Leonard only played a mere 60 games due to load management and certain injury concerns, but despite that, the man still averaged 26.6 points a game, had a 49.6 field goal percentage, and accounted 7.3 rebounds with 3.3 assists a game. Now, when it came to the awards, Leonard was an All-NBA second team, a Finals MVP, an NBA All-Star, and an NBA All-Defensive second team just this year alone. The man is incredible. He is a top 5 player in the league by far, and is probably the best two-way player this league has had, at least in this generation. Kawhi Leonard is the driving force for why Toronto was able to edge out Giannis Antetokounmpo and his Bucks, and the reason why they were able to beat Philadelphia. Kawhi Leonard is somewhat of a hero to Toronto, despite only spending one season there after signing a massive and shocking contract with the Clippers. He was loved by hundreds of thousands, even millions of fans. His character is unique. He shows humbleness that you don't see from many players this year, and he's just overall an incredible guy. Am I still jealous that we, as a team, could not cooperate with Leonard? Of course. I'm still disappointed this day. Every time I see Kawhi Leonard highlights, whether it'll be in a Clippers uniform this year or Toronto one last year, I still feel envious. But there's something I could do. Neither the Spurs. Those two parties just couldn't work their issues out. And you know what? That's fine. It was meant to be in some way. But Kawhi Leonard was obviously the main winner in this trade. And it's safe to say, when it came to the goals, like I said earlier in the intro of the video, it's a landslide. Toronto, for short-term wise, is the winner. They got what they needed, they got what they wanted, and they couldn't do anything better. They won a championship. You can't go any further than that. So it's easy to say that Toronto easily won that short-term goal, or at least a short-term effort. Now, when it comes to long-term, I do have a prediction. Now, I'm not just saying that because I'm a Spurs fan, but I genuinely think that the Spurs, long-term wise, are going to benefit for this. Kyle Lowry is already aging. Marc Gasol is not that young anymore either. And who knows what kind of contract Pascal Siakam is going to ask for, along with Serge Ibaka's health as well. I don't think that Toronto is necessarily going to benefit in the long run now after this championship. They're still going to need to do another rebuild after this. Meanwhile, with the Spurs, although DeRozan and Aldridge are getting up in age, they still have young pieces like I mentioned earlier, along with the development of Lonnie Walker and Keldon Johnson. And let's not forget about Luka Šumanik, the guy from Croatia that they just picked up with the 19th pick. But it's safe to say that the Spurs, at least currently, have not benefited from this trade at all, and they seem like clear losers. I'm just saying that as straightforward as I can. It's disappointing to see what had happened, and it's just disappointing overall if you're just a Spurs fan. But there's nothing we can do more than just wish Kawhi a nice career. To say that, that Kawhi is going to be this amazing player in the next 10 years is somewhat a little bit of a bold statement, but the man is turning 30 soon, so he doesn't have as many years left as many people hope. But I still wish Kawhi the best in his coming career with the Clippers or any other team he spends his time with. So, to end off the video, I just have a question for you, the viewer, or for anyone else watching that maybe even cares, that may or may not change the course of the NBA as we know it. And that is, with all the grievance, with all the pain, with all the miscommunication, with all the relationship issues and the secrets between Kawhi Leonard, the San Antonio Spurs, the Lakers, Clutch Sports, and even Toronto's success and San Antonio's early struggles, would all this been avoided if Zaza Pachulia had never injured Kawhi?
Aldridge pushing off on Pachulia. Leonard fires from the corner. And Leonard goes down again. And he's in pain again in front of the Spurs bench.